Hi, I'm Chelsea Jackson, and I'll be doing mine obviously in video form. So, first question, how has social media affected social activism? And I think that one big factor is that it's a big way to connect everybody. And I know people that can come together for a movement and a problem, a social issue with people who are across the world or across the country that they've never even met before. And there's a sense of community and a sense of, I guess, backing each other up in order to support the same issue. And it also is a great way to educate people and send out information they wouldn't have known otherwise. I know Facebook is one big way that as long as you're just friends with someone who shared something, you can see what they've seen. So it's just this trickle effect of sharing and it going on, and people all over the world seeing this issue that has been shared on Facebook. I know one of the articles I looked at, social media participation and activism movement for racial equality. They use Twitter to look at the Black Lives Matter movement to see the response they're getting and to see how many people are responding and participating in the Black Lives Matter movement by tweeting and seeing the retweets, the replies, and other responses that they're getting from that, which is pretty cool to see. I believe that social media is it's had a great effect on social activism. It's been a great way to get people educated and get people involved, like I said, from building a community all across the world and for spreading information that people probably wouldn't have known otherwise. But I do think there is a negative effect that has happened, is that not all of it is true. People can post whatever they want on social media, and there's really no monitoring what is true and what's not. And I believe that has kind of swayed people, and especially during politics, that's where you can see it most. But in different social issues and social activism, people can sometimes be misled or sometimes not get a full story or be fully educated because the stuff might not be fully accurate. But other than that, I believe that social media is a great form and a great platform for social activism, and it has had a great effect. So next question is, how does reality TV affect social activism? And I believe that reality TV has become so big, especially with my generation, with Bachelor and Survivor and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's something that almost everyone watches. And so it's a great platform to reach so many people, especially this new generation. But the article that I read, how well does reality TV handle social issues? It states that it's honestly not that good of a platform because it gives a false sense of relative importance. And I can understand that because a lot of people feel like they can't relate to these shows like The Bachelor. If I were to hear information coming from The Bachelor about a social issue, I most likely wouldn't really think it was that credible or really get much from it, especially also like Keeping Up with the Kardashians. If they were to talk about a social issue, I don't really know how much that would have an impact on people just because of the credibility and that people can't really relate to the Kardashians. And I believe that's probably one of the factors that hurts reality TV most when it comes to social activism. But one of the things that is good about that is that it can honestly like kind of subtly help with social activism by filling the shows with lesbian and gays. It can fill the shows with minorities and just kind of show that this is the norm and create a norm through the shows that, or any other thing that is a social activism or a social issue or a movement. It can be subtly placed as like it's a norm in these shows and to kind of like try and, I don't know, just have people accept it. But overall, I believe that reality TV is not a good platform and has not had a good effect on social activism and the reaction that people have taken from it. The next question is, how have podcasts affected social activism? And one of the articles that I read said that 68 million people listen to podcasts today. That means that so many people are trying to get information and hear more about different things, whether that is informational, whether that is just entertainment. And so it means that there's a great avenue for people who can hear things through podcasts. I know the podcasts I listen to are at least over an hour. I think the shortest one I've ever listened to is like 25 minutes. So it's a great way to get an in-depth form of information. I know there are some that can be really quick, but for the most part, podcasts, if you're doing something along the lines of a movement or along the lines of a social issue, it's all informational. It's usually not entertainment. And so you're getting an hour's worth of information. And I believe that's so much more credible than a social media site or a reality TV show. It's someone who's actually sitting there explaining true issues going on and saying the backgrounds behind it and just different things like that. And I believe that's very powerful, and I recommend, honestly, that for anybody. That's one of the things I do all the time if I want to get caught up on just current events. That's what I turn to as podcasts, and it really does help. One of the things that I feel like it's had a good effect is one of the articles I read said that a Bo Revel podcast, it's about a murder case, and basically they were just investigating the murder case, and it's had such a big effect that it even caused a retrial for this case. And not only a retrial, but this case was for an Aboriginal child who was murdered. And it basically went through and had spread all this awareness for Aboriginal children, murders going on, and this just mistreatment for them. And it just goes to show that it can have a great effect on movements, one, by teaching them, but then two, by showing, okay, this has been going on, here's what needs to change, and here's what needs to be fixed. And so I believe that it's had a very great effect, and I highly recommend podcasts to anybody. Next question is, did the Women's March affect social activism? And I believe it 100% did. One of the big things that came out of it, I heard, was power to the poll. Basically just saying that here we are speaking out, but at the end of the day, you have to go to the polls to vote. You have to put your word in there. And I believe that's what women are starting to do. We are realizing that it is such a power to be able to vote in the first place, because we have not always had that right. And now we can see the effects of it, but we have to vote in order to get these rights and these equalities. We have to put our name out there and make sure we show up to the polls to show that we do care and want to make a change. And then we're not just going to talk about it. We're actually going to try and do it. But also, it just taught women to finally speak up, that people will listen to us. This was one of the biggest marches, and actually was the biggest march, and it just showed people that we're sick of it. We're sick of not having the equality, and we want to do something about it. And it was so publicized that people could not ignore the fact that these women were having this march. The issues could not be ignored. And I believe it showed women that we can speak up, and that we need to keep speaking up in order to get this equality. And that's what I was really proud about, is that we finally showed everyone that we're sick of this, and we're finally doing something about it, and you won't be able to ignore us. But I do believe it had a great effect on social activism. This was one of the first marches, the major marches that women have had since, I think it was 1913. And that's huge, to be able to do something like this and to gather something like this. And it just brought, like I said, so much attention that going forward, women's rights and equalities can't be ignored, because we are finally speaking up and we're getting the publicity that we deserve. The only negative part I did here is when I went to this women's march, there were people there that were also marching for other stuff, not just for women's rights, stuff that didn't really necessarily go along with it. And I think that if we're going to do this march, we need to solely march for women. We can have different marches for other things at different times. We need to all gather together for one thing, and then we can march about these other things later. And so I feel like those kind of took away, because we're there for women. We're not there for all these other issues that are going on, even though they probably do need to be addressed as well. But overall, the Women's March was something I was very proud took place, and it did make a huge impact on social activism. The next question is, how does religion affect social activism? And I think this is a very complicated question and situation that everyone is facing. It's kind of one of those things that no one really knows how to deal with. You have people who are raised to believe one thing, and then you have movements and all these social issues that they're trying to overcome and all this stuff like that, that kind of go against what these religions are teaching, and you'll never really get people to agree. And that's kind of why I feel like it's been very conflicting, and we haven't really made much progress bringing those overcoming those conflicts, because it's not just a matter of racial issues or anything that is just like basically an opinion based. This is a religion that goes back for decades, and you're asking people to change their views of religion in order for these movements, and it can become very difficult, and it gets very hostile because one side sees it as in you need to be more accepting, and then other people see it as in, well, this is my religion, I've been raised like that. So it's very difficult. We see this mainly with the LGBTQ movement. You talk to Christians who don't believe in that, and then you have movements supporting it, and pride weeks and months and stuff like that, and you never really see the support of these Christians because it goes against what they've believed in. And so it's a conflict, ongoing conflict, that I don't really know how that will ever be resolved. And especially with church and state, separation of church and state, you can't really get government involved for these issues when there is the separation of state. And I believe it's very complicated, and I don't want to say if it's had a good or a bad effect. I just feel like it's an issue that will be ongoing forever, and it's a conflict that really won't ever have a solution. So I think it's something that, if can be avoided in movements, that's probably the best option. The next question is, how do universities affect social activism? And I think universities are a great place for social activism. It gives students a sense of community for people to be activists together. I know there's so many different groups and so many just different types of people on campus, so many diverse people, that you can find someone in some group to be able to back each other and support each other for a group. And I know going to college, I've been able to encounter so many things I did not have much education about. I was able to make friends and go to different events for these other activists and social issues that I wasn't even aware of, and now I've been able to be educated on them and have a completely different view of them. And otherwise, if I had not gone to this university, that I would not be able to encounter that, and I think it's very great. And like I said, there's several courses just at OU alone, and several organizations that people can become a part of that offer just any type of support and any type of education you need to be able to start some type of social activism, which is a great opportunity that anyone who goes to a university can start. And then that community, that town that those colleges are in, are also affected, because just the different marches and parades that they can do, or anything they can get back to, I feel like it not only just stays in the university, but it also filters out into people around the area. But the only thing that I think that is negative or kind of bad about universities and students at universities doing social activism is that it's really hard to gain respect from older generations. When it's a bunch of college students coming together, it's honestly kind of like, some people view it as, I don't want to say just some childish things that they're doing, but it's just, some people don't really want to look down and have to learn from people younger than them. And so it's very hard to gain that respect from older generations being in college, starting a movement or participating in the movement and trying to speak up. And so that's the only hard part, and that's the only obstacle universities have to overcome. But I feel like overall that it's had a great effect on social activism. One of the articles I read was about the University of Missouri, how when all the racial incidents came out, that it ended up bringing up more people from University of Missouri who were like, no, we're against this, and starting more social activists to come out and say, we're standing up against this, this is not okay, this is not who we are. And it was very cool to see that a group of college students could do that. They were people my age. The next question is, how has GoFundMe affected social activism? And I believe it has helped it enormously. Speaking up and starting a movement and trying to publicize it and get a huge community behind it and people to back it up, and especially to get government to back it up, it's not cheap. And it can go through so much. I know the Women's March, the amount of money that had been talked about that was raised for that was incredible. And GoFundMe is a perfect way to support those people and to start some funding, even if it's not much, just to be able to have something to spread the word and something to publicize and have some type of resource. And I believe that GoFundMe was perfectly ingenious for that. Just like there is a lot of controversy over the Jack Phillips case, which is the case that the gay couple went into the went into the bakery, and the baker refused the cake because he didn't want to make it for the gay couple because of his religion, and went through all this lawsuits, and bakery ended up shutting down. And so there were just GoFundMes for the baker and GoFundMes for the gay couple, both for legal coverage and to cover the bakery's costs for shutting down, and just all these different funds that came along with what happened. And it not only brought attention to their case, it showed how much support each people had. Like, I'm sure that this baker felt enormous amount of support behind him when he was just trying to do what he thought was right according to his religion. And I'm sure that gay couple felt a lot of support by that community, knowing that he was supported by somebody and not getting denied by everybody out there. And this goes back to the question of religion and social activism. It's kind of, I feel like, ongoing. But overall, I believe that GoFundMe has had a great effect on social activism. It's just been a great way to support people and give them the resources needed to spread the word and to continue their movement. So, the next question is, how has sports affected social activism? And it's had a great effect in the last couple of years, especially with the NFL. Their league is so popular and so many people watch it and so many people gather to watch it. It's a huge deal. And so it's a great platform to spread the word and to get this voice out that otherwise might not, as an individual who is just an average day person compared to someone who is, on TV every Sunday. And I feel like it was a great platform to be able to publicize the issues that was going on, and especially with the Black Lives Matter in football. Everyone today knows what the issue was, and it was most likely because of the NFL activism that they were doing and that they were standing up for. And I thought it was a great effect on activism just because of how much it publicized it. Most people kind of would have just brushed it off and kind of moved on, but these people showed, no, we're serious about this and we're going to keep doing this and we're going to keep kneeling for what we think is right, and made a lot of people mad, but it kept bringing up the issue that this is a serious issue and it really needs to be addressed. It did have some backlash, so it might have overall had a bad effect. Good intentions, I think, kind of bad effect on the receiving end of people who were watching. These people just wanted to watch football and wanted to watch their sport, and they believed that it was horrible timing, especially during the national anthem, that these people should not be disrespecting the flag, and it caused a whole bunch of issues that, yes, you can protest, but not during something so sentimental to our country. And so there were conflicting views on whether it was appropriate or not, but overall, did it affect social activism? It had a huge effect on social activism. And it reached so many more people because they were smart at the fact that they knew that everyone tunes in to watch NFL football, or NFL, and everyone is going to talk about it. Everyone, after a game, when it goes on, everyone's going to get on social media and talk about it. And so they were smart to do it in such an area that was publicized. So the next question is, have music videos had effect on social activism? And I think they have. Just like the football, they have a huge popularity. These artists are so well known, and I know anytime an artist comes out with a new song and a new music video, I'm probably the first person to look it up. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I know that they're smart in using their platform and their popularity to spread words and to speak up for those people who, like an average person like me, would probably never be heard. And I think that is very important. And a song can be great towards a movement, but pairing it with a video to show an actual meaning and to show that deeper connection meaning is a whole different level. And so I do think music videos are a great way to express things. Just like Beyonce, her music video was iconic. It wasn't just a simple music video, it was a whole movie that you watched. And it basically, to me, I took away is that those are the emotions that girls go through because of men. And people need to understand that. You have anger, you have depression, you have isolation, you have all these different emotions, and it's what we go through. And it's kind of just like a, I don't know, kind of way to relate to women and being like, we're all in this, we all go through this. We need to stand up and we need to be proud to be women. We don't need to let these men affect us. That's kind of how I took that, and it was, like I said, iconic, honestly. And then I also have taken another class called Native American Music, and one of the things in there is a tribe called Red, and it's a band, and they produce all this music, and their music videos are so touching because of basically just their message, how Indigenous people have been forgotten about, and that they are regular people and they're important people. And it's very cool to watch their music videos to show that meaning that is behind the song. You can hear it in the songs, but once you watch a music video, it makes more sense, and it kind of feel bad watching it. So that's something that's very powerful. And like I said, I think it has had a great effect. It doesn't give a very deep meaning, a very deep education on these issues, but it gives such a deep meaning that it can inspire and encourage people to go get more education about these social issues. And the last question is, how has text messaging affected social activism? And I believe it has not been very popular or like the face of social activism, but has been in the background very important to social activism. I read a thing that from the ages of 18 to 22, young adults, they will send 67 messages per day. And that's honestly impressive to me. I know if I were to get a message from one of my friends saying that she really cared about a topic and a social issue that was going on, I would be more invested on it. If she texted me personally and said, I really care about this, can you help me support it, or just anything. And I know that's probably how it is for a lot of people. They can text people they know, they have this instant contact with people they can talk to about issues, and it makes people honestly just instantly more invested. And that's been very powerful. And you can fastly do it. It's not like you have to wait to see them in person or anything like that. It's something with technology that's come along, just like social media, that it's just made it very more accessible and very easier to contact people. And also, if you want to go to something really fast, you'd be like, hey, I really care about this protest or this thing going on, will you go with me? You text people last minute, and it's been very, very, I think, great use of texting. And you can also hold people accountable. You can also just check in with them every once in a while by texting, and I think that's very cool that you can use such a simple, everyday thing for social activism. And I believe it can have some bad effects, but for the most part, overall, it's had a very great effect on social activism, and will continue to do that, especially with our generation and the generations below us being more comfortable with texting and more popular to us. I believe that it will become very heavily used in social activism and will have a great effect. Sorry for talking more than 1 minute on each question. So this video is kind of longer than 10 minutes.